Smoak and Craig Smoak.
Hey, Paul will be back with us tomorrow. We're traveling tomorrow, but we'll have our show at 3 o'clock. We're now joined by Max Olson, theathletic.com. We've known Max a long time, one of the great national writers, and had nothing really to talk about or to investigate or write about the last few weeks. Max, great to have you again. Every day is a new day, and then yet again it's the same day for the Big 12. The Pac-12 announced, not a surprise, that they would not expand. Was that actually good or bad news for the remaining 8 in the Big 12?
Oh, man, I thought you guys would ask me about, like, Gary Bohannon or football season or something, you know?
Oh, God. Is that going on?
Is that
there a game
still?
coming up? Is there a fighting for positions?
Depth chart breakdown, maybe. I don't know, you know? I mean, I guess you guys want to talk about that stuff, we can. If you want. What was the question, Smokey?
You know what it was. Pac-12, is this a good day for the Big 12 or a bad one? They've had a lot of bad ones.
Yeah, I think there's definitely two ways to look at it. And I tried to sort of address this in my piece yesterday on The Athletic, that there are definitely members of the remaining 8 who understand that, right now, and, never say never, but right now, the other Power 5 leagues look like they're not expanding. And so they understand, hey, we need to now get together, the 8 of us, and put in the work to make the Big 12 as good as it can possibly be after Texas and Oklahoma leave. There are other members of the Big 12 that tried really hard to get into the Pac-12 and, want to have more options, obviously. You don't blame them because you want to do everything you can to defend your school, and you want to have options, and you're obviously scared about the future of the Big 12. And so I think for the members that are still trying really hard to have an escape plan, today's a tough day because it looks like over the short term here that those other 4 Power 5 leagues are not looking to expand. Now that could change, you can't say that now they're stuck together through 2025 or whatever. There's a lot that can still change, but this news is not surprising. But I'm sure for a few members of the Big 12 that were holding out hope that maybe they could go to the Pac-12, it's tough news to get.
So, Max, if you're these 8 schools and Bob Bowlsby, obviously, what's the next step as far as you're concerned?
I think you have to, from that standpoint, the Pac-12 news is good news for the Big 12 in that you can say, all right, look, this is the reality. You guys wanted to have as many options on the table. Well, a lot of those options are off the table now. And so let's get serious about our future and, the Big 12, 3.0 or whatever you want to call it. And so I think now, obviously there are obstacles to just, totally getting right into expansion and all that kind of stuff. Because you don't know what Texas and Oklahoma are going to do if they're going to stay till 25 or if they're actually, trying to exit before then. But, I think right now Bob Bowlsby has an opportunity to, over these next few weeks, put together, a plan for what the future of this conference looks like, how they can make up this money that they're, potentially losing here. And obviously, I think it needs to be a compelling plan because there are still, there are definitely a few presidents out there that are frustrated and anxious. And, I think Bowlsby has to do a great job of coming up with a plan that everyone can get behind. And certainly the big challenge here, as we've talked about, is getting all 8 of them on the same page and collaborating and trusting each other.
You think they are?
I think they are doing that right now.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of saying one thing and doing another. I think that's just kind of been the job for the last 4 or 5 weeks here. And I don't blame any athletic director or president or booster or whatever for doing that. I think right now everyone wants to talk about unity and, hey, we'll get through this together. But these schools have still spent the last 4 or 5 weeks, having all these conversations, trying to figure out what else is out there. And the unfortunate verdict today for them is that, the Pac-12 is not expanding and, Big Ten's never given any indication. I'm sure there's probably folks in West Virginia that hope the ACC has a change of heart about that. But unless the SEC is trying to do something crazy, I think that these folks right now are sort of stuck together and have no choice, but to work together.
So, Max, there's the whole autonomy thing. I've never quite understood, how long does that last for the Big Ten? Does that last through their TV contract no matter what they are at as far as the number of teams go?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's not some expiration date as far as I understand. No one has shown me that here in writing is when these are the five autonomy 5 leagues, and up until this date, and then we'll see after that. This is stuff this is in writing in the NCAA bylaws, basically, that these 5 conferences, and they name the 5 conferences, are the autonomy 5 conferences that have this decision making power. And so it would take my understanding is it would take a legislative process to remove the Big 12 from that list of 5 schools. And so look, I think my sense is there's not there's the perception piece of that, obviously, of do people still view you as a Power 5 league, but in terms of the voting, and certainly the most important thing there too is also sort of the CFP shares and things like that. It's not like that expires in 2026 or something like that necessarily.
So that's why instead of the AAC being the one that could be more of the hunter in this situation, because they have the ESPN deal and the Big 12's on shaky rocks, obviously, that's why the Big 12 is still attractive, right? That's why this is going potentially in their direction rather than these 8 heading in the direction of the AAC.
Yeah, that's correct. At least at this point in time, I think there's, since this all began, Bowlsby has heard from 15 plus schools. Most of the AAC, most of the Mountain West. Certainly, I think BYU is a real possibility too, and I'm sure there's been others because those schools desire Power 5 status and Power 5 money. Now, certainly, we don't have a great understanding of what does Power 5 money look like in the Big 12 beyond 2025. How different is that TV deal? But, if you're in the AAC right now, the distribution you're getting is, closer to 4 or 5 million and not, the Big 12 is closer to 40. And I know even if you say, cut that in half or worse, it's still, we don't know what the financials look like in 25 and beyond. But I think for those group of 5 schools, it's still an upgrade in a lot of ways to be able to get into the Big 12.
Max Olson with us, theathletic.com, has been covering this since the day of, in fact, soon after Big 12 Media Days. Max, in the end, if the 8 teams, if they are patient and wait for Oklahoma and Texas to leave, then yes, they might get checks that might be less than what perhaps they should get, but it's money. But I don't see how they can just where is Bob Bowlsby? Craig's brought this up, and we've all brought it up. You don't want to just hear him flap his lips, but should he not be at least out front in some ways saying something?
It's an interesting point. I think he put out a terse statement the other day about the alliance, but other than the day when he went after ESPN and that whole deal, that was probably the most he's kind of come out and spoken publicly about all this. That and the appearing in front of that Senate committee for 2 hours or whatever it was in Austin. I think that's kind of the most we've publicly heard from Bob Bowlsby. And I don't know. Do you feel like you want to hear him come out and say definitively, here's what we're doing, and reassure everybody this conference is going to be fun?
No, it's
that's what we were talking about. It's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because there's not really anything he can say. But at the same time, for these 8 schools that are just kind of hanging by a thread, it would be nice to just have some type of a reassurance that the person in charge is active. You know what I mean?
But it might be behind the scenes with text messages and conference calls.
Yeah, I think everybody's probably assuming that he's making tons of those, and there's tons of things he can't talk about. But yeah, I mean, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't, really.
Well, I'm looking. You guys know from what's going on right now too that there's also the real serious issues that these athletic departments are dealing with again with in terms of campus policies and event policies and all the stuff that in dealing with the pandemic again. So it is a very full plate for all involved here. I'm not trying to make excuses or anything. I'm just saying I do wonder if this stuff will. Maybe this is wishful thinking, but I do wonder if this stuff will quiet down a little bit here, just because it seems like Oklahoma and Texas are going to stay silent about their intentions. And obviously with the semester and season starting and all that kind of stuff, I know it's very uncomfortable to just sit here and not have answers, but I do wonder if this stuff if nobody else is expanding, then maybe this stuff has to just kind of settle down for a little while.
And really today, with the Pac-12 statement, which was not a surprise, and really the alliance that was built up as if it was going to be like some major deal, which really is a kind of like, it depends on how you want to look at it. Yeah, it'd be nice to be involved in that. Nothing really happened, but it really affects nothing when it comes to the Big 12 survival or not. They could have been a part of the alliance. That doesn't mean anything other than schedules 3 to 5 or 7 years from now.
Yeah, you're right about that. And, there's also a perspective on, as much as it might be exciting to talk about, here's the members you could add to the Big 12 and, who adds value and what makes sense, for the future and stuff. I think there's still understanding among some ADs I talk to that, look, the unfortunate thing is that there is still a long runway to this. If Texas and Oklahoma stay through 25 because they just don't want to pay that exit penalty, then, they've got time to figure this out. And I know nobody wants to hear that, but, this is kind of the tough spot you're in where there's not a whole lot you can really kind of do right now to change the mood.
Max, I do want to ask you about, Hudson Card, although Sarkisian said that it's not official just yet, and Gary Bohannon, but is there like a next step now if you're the if you're the Big 12, are you in a position now where if you are interested in expanding, you start that, or do you have to wait until Texas and Oklahoma are gone officially to be able to do that?
Yeah, that's one of the key things here that I just really have not gotten a straight answer on from people. There's some people that feel like, just in terms of the order of operations of all this, that keeping them in the conference as long as possible is in some ways viewed as an important piece of this, and that they don't, that there's a little bit of a fear here of like, if we panic and start making some big changes here, that's kind of what the two schools want. They want to get out of it. So there's a little bit of question to that, and just in terms of your TV deal and all that, you have to wait until they leave. So that is something that I think with the Pac-12 news today, like that's a great question you asked, and one that now the presidents and ADs really have to start chewing on that one. All
right, thank you very much.
What do you think of Gary Bohannon starting quarterback at Baylor, Max?
Oh, by the way, they're playing a week from Saturday. Yeah,
that was a total bluff on my part. I have no, I'm just kidding. No, I think it's. Do you guys think that's one where somebody's starting, 11 or 12 games there, or do you think that could potentially kind of go back and forth a little bit?
I talked about this. I was actually, remember, on the golf course when you called, you're getting ready to do a podcast, and yeah. I just felt like the needle was leaning his way. But I'm not going to – I hope for Gary's sake, because if it is, that means that's good for Baylor as well, and him. But I have no idea.
I don't think he had a massive amount of separation. I think that he's the guy for now, and then we'll see what happens. I'm not banking on him being just the guy, though, for like the next couple seasons, from my vantage point at least. And
you guys know right now in 2021, kind of a weird position to be in is having 4 really good ones in your room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We've had the transfer conversations already, and start thinking about all that. But yeah, it's good for Gary. But I definitely have been just saying, hey, if you're Blake Shapen or Jacob Zeno or Kyron Drones, you better still be ready, because we've seen Baylor's history at quarterback when it comes to injuries and all that too. And I don't think he's just cemented as the man from this point forward.
I know people always kind of you like to have that guy that can we develop someone into a 3-4 year starter, but I'm interested to see how this room shakes out. And I'm not saying that to question Bohannon. I know how highly Matt Rule's staff thought of him too when he came in, and they thought he'd have a super bright future at Baylor. So great to see him get his chance. And but yeah, I imagine the competition keeps going in that room, and I think you've got a couple really you've got a bunch of really interesting guys to potentially build around there if you're Dave Aranda.
No question. Max, thank you very much. One day, maybe we will just talk football.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Maybe just a little bit about football. That's Max.
Like next week, you're going to ask me for picks on games. I'm going to be like, who's playing who?
What conference are they in?
Hell, here's the problem with that. I don't know who's playing next week.
Yeah,
I know that you and I at 12 hope we see something different for the mighty Big Red, right? Just a little bit, but I don't expect any change.
Oh, buddy. Who knows?
Yeah, thanks, Max.
The whole nation will be watching Nebraska football on Saturday, and that is That is a scary proposition.
In a game against two teams that no one really cares about other than their fan bases, and boy, have things changed. Thank you.
And Illinois kind of whipped them last year. All right, take care.
Beat them up pretty
Thanks,
good.
Max. Appreciate
Max Olson, theathletic.com. We'll take a break here.
That was interesting, though, to hear. Like, I mean, I'm glad I was able to get his thoughts on the kind of the timeline now for the Big 12, as they're in a weird spot now, we can't really do anything until Texas and Oklahoma leave potentially, but so yeah, like if you're the UCF fan base or again any of the fan bases of the teams we mentioned, today's news is great news to you. I would think you're like, hell yeah.
Was today's news bad for Texas and not that they have bad news, but that means that the conference didn't get two teams peeled away and.
Well, I think your best hope if you were Texas and Oklahoma was yes that the Pac-12 would announce that they're adding at least two teams, if not more. And you would hope,
and then all hell breaks
your
loose.
ultimate hope would be they'd add like 4, and then the Big 12 is totally screwed, and they're not even able to maintain autonomy status. I think 4 would be the threshold for that, which they would be down to. So, yeah, I think you're breathing a little bit of sigh of relief if you're Bob Bowlsby. You're, maybe slightly annoyed if you're Oklahoma and Texas, but really it doesn't change anything for you. And you're going to leave when you're going to leave anyways. Whatever the Big 12's doing is not really preventing you one way or the other. It's just whenever they decide to write those checks or write it out. I mean, that's the two options in front of those schools. So, yeah, I think it's good news if you're the AAC because, if anything, you're going to have this talk now about, potential some of those teams moving up or potentially, depending on how, wild this gets, the AAC poaching trying to poach the Big 12 through ESPN or what. Yeah, it's definitely not settled. That's for sure. But there is some good news and bad news to be had today.
So many of you, again, the poll now up to 551 of you in less than an hour. So many of you on the chat and text, and we have not been able to get to everybody. We'll try to do that a little bit in the 5 o'clock hour. Coming up next, longtime former college football offensive line coach John Grimes. He's retired.